Love him or hate him, Ye is undoubtedly one of the most influential artists and producers of all time. And across all of his iconic albums, you can almost instantly tell which album a song is from just by listening to one genius part of his production: the drums. So in today's video, we're going to be doing a deep dive on 3 of Ye's signature drum styles and making 3 beats inspired by key albums and eras of Kanye. There's going to be a ton of gems in here on how to make unique, standout drums like Kanye, so make sure to stay tuned until the end and get ready to go into the experimental, distorted, and unique world of Kanye's drums. Kanye himself said that his drums are actually his Achilles heel, his weakness as a producer.
My drums are actually my Achilles heel. We still be redoing the drums to this day. We still redo the drums to Can't Tell Me Nothing. Can't Tell Me don't knock like Mike Will. It don't knock like Travis Scott.
But that hasn't stopped him from creating some of the best drums in hip-hop production. Whether it's those boom bap, chipmunk soul kind of beats that you hear on albums like Late Registration and College Dropout, experimental, out of this world distorted stuff on Yeezus, or gritty live drum breaks on albums like Twisted Fantasy, Kanye's drums always stand out. And a lot of that is due to him always pushing the sound forward and also having a team of legendary co-producers that help him build out the drums on his tracks. So with pushing the sound forward in mind, I wanted to start this video off with Kanye's most out there project sonically, Yeezus.
You're lost.
Yeezus is full of these ridiculously weird, industrial, and distorted kind of sounds. Super electronic sounding drums and overall just a really weird, experimental vibe, which is exactly what I want to go for in this first beat. And I think easily, hands down, my favorite drums on a Kanye record have got to be the drums on Black Skinhead. Listen specifically to the kind of drums used. It's not your normal kind of pattern with a standard hi-hat, snare, open hat, that kind of thing. Instead, it's these low kick tom kind of drums that are the whole driving force for the beat. So to start off these drums, the first thing I needed was a low sounding tom. And inside the drum mastery kit, there's a perfect sound for this inside of the experimental folder. So I took this, and for that Black Skinhead vibe, you want to make sure that you're sitting at around 110 to 130 BPM, and you want to use busy triplets for these tom patterns. The way that I kind of think about the toms in these kind of beats is almost like a hi-hat. Like it's like the driving, most busy kind of pattern in the whole drums, but it's also kind of like a hybrid of like a kick pattern in with that. So let me go on the screen and show you what I'm talking about. So this is the pattern that we have, and I'm going to show you how you can reconstruct it. So if we were just using normal quarter notes or 8 notes, and we were just like, let's say we just did like a simple pattern like this, right? Listen to the difference in the bounce, right? It has like no like sauce to it. So the first thing that you can do that instantly will really help whenever you're making these tom patterns is mess with the velocity. You don't want to just do it like a little bit like this. You want it to be pretty dramatic, right? Maybe something like this. Doing stuff like that makes it sound a lot more realistic, and you want these toms to be pretty dynamic. But as far as rhythm goes, you want to make sure that you have this on 3rd step, which is just triplets. And then if you see here, if we put these down as triplets, even just a simple pattern like this, it has that more like Black Skinhead kind of vibe. And then you want to go in and start messing with the velocity on all this stuff. And then what I did on ours is I just went in and deleted some of these hits. Maybe something like this. So after messing around with deleting stuff, messing with the velocity a ton, as you can see right here, you get this. And one last thing, you'll notice that the times when the velocity is the highest is when you're on those quarter note beats. So the strong beats, you're gonna wanna have that be when the velocity is the highest. So it's emphasizing that more like normal metronome kind of rhythm. And these other little triplet ones are just there to kind of add like a little bounce. Another thing you can do to make these toms sound more realistic is layer in a second tom sound that's kind of accenting the first one. So I grabbed this second tom from that drum mastery kit and put down this pattern. Instantly, it's got that Black Skinhead energy, and I love it. For the next sound, I wanted to add another thing that you hear on a lot of this Yeezus style production, tonal snares, which is essentially just a snare that has like a melodic note to it. And these sounds give a really industrial and electronic kind of vibe to the music. Take a listen. super weird sounds, which is exactly what we're looking for. So I went to look for a tonal sound inside of drum mastery and found this super weird sound. This sound's got that perfect tonal, weird kind of sound that I wanted, but it was missing the body that a main snare would have. So I layered that in with another distorted, still weird snare. And when you play both of those on top of each other with the toms, you get this. Next up, I wanted to take inspiration from Black Skinhead again, because throughout the beat, you can hear this super harsh, like open hat, like noisy kind of sound, and it adds a ton of energy to the beat. So I added a sound similar to that at the end of every pattern. It's almost there to kind of indicate like the pattern is ending and we're about to go into the next section of the beat. Now, to finish off the A section of these drums, I wanted to add in a fuzzy, distorted bass like the one you can hear on Bound 2. You can hear these distorted synth basses in a ton of Kanye's production, especially on Yeezus. And there's one bass sound from Drum Mastery that I have been abusing that's perfect for this kind of sound. It's called the Eat Dinner bass from the Experimental Kit, and this is what that sounds like. And now for the bass pattern, one super easy way to get that dark Yeezus kind of energy is to use half steps, which is just a fancy way for saying notes that are one note apart. A simple 2-note bass line can work really well if you're using these half steps, but I threw in a little extra sauce to the pattern and got this bass line. Starting to sound crazy. Or we're gonna sauce it up a little bit more by adding a drum B section. One thing that Kanye does a lot in his production is change stuff up throughout the song. So it's not just the same 8-bar loop looping for 3 minutes straight. And a lot of people do this by just taking out a sound or two for a verse or a hook. But when Kanye creates full B sections that completely change the vibe, that's what really takes records like Bound 2 to the next level.
All them other niggas lame and you know it now. When the real nigga
So I wanted to do this with our drums and not just leave that pattern that we made looping the entire song. So the first thing I did was drop those main tom sounds that we put down and that bass line, and I swapped that bass for a distorted 808 like the one you can hear on I Am a God. So I deleted all the drum sounds other than that snare and that 808, and you get this for a B section. Now, at this point, the main drum idea is done, but it's missing a little bit of extra sauce that really breathes life into these Kanye records. Drum fills and sound effects. A lot of times, these are the most memorable sounds in songs, whether it's a vox like the one on Bound,
honey,
or the crazy fills on Black Skinhead. These details add up and really take the record to the next level. So I went into the drum mastery kit and I found some distorted vox sound effects, some breathing sound effects like the ones on Black Skinhead, and a ton of these fire drum fills that I just dragged and dropped into the pattern. All right, so if you look in the project file right here, you can see that we have quite a few sound effects and drum fills. And the first thing I wanted to add was this little tom drum fill right here, because I feel like it already fit perfectly in with those drums that we had. Just kind of adds a little bit more extra bounce. Next up, I added these little breaths, just to kind of give that Black Skinhead energy. And then I went in and added a lot of these like distorted vox one-shots, like this one right here that I drowned in some delay. Right? And then this one right here that hits with that main tom pattern. Just adds a lot of flavor to the beat and a lot of like impact on the one. And then finally, these other drum fills right here, these three right here have a more like distorted, gritty kind of sound. And I'm really only using these to transition in between different sections of the beat. Kind of how in Black Skinhead, it has that super distorted drum fill that plays in between those main sections. On the master, I have the soft clipper as the last thing so it doesn't clip, but I actually used Sound Goodizer on the master, which I know is a meme, but if you use it right, it's actually fire. So this is what it sounds like without the Sound Goodizer, right? And then with it, just adds this like a little bit of like this warm distortion to it if you put it nice and subtle like that. And then the next plugin I added was Decimort 2, which is a bit crusher. And if you use this right, you can really get that like on-site digital Yeezus kind of sound by using this right here and lowering the resolution. So at a normal resolution, it would sound like this. right? And as we lower this resolution, you can hear that like really ugly kind of sound. So I put this at around 8 in RB and turn the mix down a little bit, just so it adds a little bit of that bit crushed, distorted sound, but not too crazy. With all those drum fills and sound effects together, plus our main drum pattern, you get this for the final product. Sounding insane, if you ask me. And if you haven't caught on yet, a big reason that these drums sound so crazy is not just the creativity with the patterns, but it's the unique sound selection. A lot of drum kits you get nowadays have super uninspired, recycled sounds that are boring, but if you like the drum sounds that you just heard, they all come from my brand new kit, Drum Mastery. This kit has over 3,000 drum samples, melody loops, drum MIDI, drum loops with stems, drum fills, live play drum breaks, and percussion loops, and even pre-mixed project templates that have all the sounds selected for you and everything mixed, so you can make beats that hit instantly every single time. And the best part is it has 6 different genres inside. Experimental, which you just heard, trap, R&B, vintage, pop, and international. So you can make virtually any vibe at a godly level like Kanye. And I'll be using this kit for every single drum sound in the remainder of the video as well. So if you like what you hear, click the first link in the description to check out Drum Mastery and level up your drums today. Anyways, back of the video. The next era of Kanye that I want to get into is that college dropout, late registration kind of vibe. That iconic chipmunk soul sound that everybody loves from Ye. And contrary to a lot of his later work, these sounds aren't too out of the ordinary, too experimental and crazy, but they have a super good feeling and bounce to them. So let's dive right in. When I think of this college dropout, bear era of Kanye, I think of songs like Gold Digger, All Falls Down, and Through the Wire.
West side, we don't set this party.
Now I ain't saying she a gold digger.
Yo, Chief, they can't stop me from rapping, can they?
These drums sound great and have that live kind of sound, but if you listen, you can clearly tell that they're actually programmed in and not just sampled live drum breaks that just loop for the whole entire song, which Kanye does do a lot, by the way, but we'll get into that later. What he was actually doing a lot is sampling drum one-shots from those drum breaks and then programming in his own pattern with the MPC. I think one of the first things that I notice in these beats is the super bouncy kick rhythms, especially on Gold Digger and Touch the Sky.
Now I ain't saying she a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke. I gotta testify. Come up in the spot looking extra fly.
I love that almost stompy, airy kind of sound that these kicks have. So to get that sound, I grabbed this 90s sounding kick from the Drum Mastery kit that sounds like this. And I found another sound that has a much more airy, unique stomp kind of texture to it. And I layered that in under the main punchy kick. Anyways, for the kick pattern, I put the metronome to 94 BPM, which is a perfect sweet spot for these college dropout kind of beats. And then I made sure to play in the kick on my MIDI keyboard, physically playing it in, not just clicking it in MIDI with a super robotic sound. Because like I said, Kanye was actually playing these drums in on his MPC. Anyways, with all that in mind, here's what our kick pattern sounds like. Next up, we need to add in some sort of clap or snare sound to lock in the main bounce. And after listening to a lot of these records, I realized that he uses a loose-ish kind of clap in a lot of these songs.
Now I ain't saying she a gold digger, but she, I gotta testify. Come up in the spot looking extra fly.
Drink a boost for breakfast, an intro for dessert. Somebody order pancakes.
That kind of clap instantly gives me that 2000s energy. So I found a similar sound inside of Drum Mastery, and with the kicks that we laid down earlier, you get this. And now that we have that, I'm not gonna lie, the foundation is pretty much set on this beat. These college dropout and late registration beats were oftentimes really carried by the sample chops, so we really only need to add one more main drum sound to this, a hi-hat. And instead of just throwing in a two-step and calling it a day, I want to take some inspiration from All Falls Down, where you can hear this cool stop and go kind of pattern that Kanye did with the hi-hats.
West side, we don't set this party off right.
In that record, you can definitely hear that it's a more live-ish hi-hat sound being used. So I went into the vintage folder of Drum Mastery that has a ton of these live played hi-hats. And then I played in a stop and go hi-hat pattern on my MIDI keyboard, again, to just emulate actually playing them in finger drumming on an MPC, not quantizing it, leaving it natural to make sure that it still has that human kind of bounce. For the next sound, we gotta add some bongos. And I'm gonna be real, the only reason I'm adding this is because on the last Kanye video that I did, my boy Scott the Pisces went crazy on me on the comments. And this comment has stuck with me forever. But he's right, if you listen to songs like Through the Wire, you can hear these super vibey bongos that add a ton of soul and flavor into the beat.
Too much stuff on my heart right now.
So I went into the international kit inside of Drum Mastery that has a ton of these live perk loops that I actually did with real session percussion players, people that play the bongos and all that stuff for a living. And I found this live bongo loop that fit perfectly with our drums. Finally, to finish off these drums, I wanted to add a big kick roll, something that kind of builds up at the end of the pattern to go into the next section of the beat. And you can hear this clear as day on songs like Through the Wire and Gold Digger.
Kenny hot.
So I put down this 16th note kick that just kind of starts at a low velocity and builds up into the end of the pattern. And then I layered that in with a tom fill from the vintage kit in Drum Mastery that's playing that same 16th note rhythm, as well as a DJ scratch effect to really just emphasize that 2000s, 90s kind of production. And with those three elements together, you get this. And with that, the drums are done. So to demo it with some context so you can tell what it would sound like, I grabbed this soul melody inside of the melody loop folder of Drum Mastery, pitched it up to get that chipmunk sound, and when you put that over the drums, you get the finished beat. Sounding fire. But now that we've covered those two vibes, I want to get into the drums behind my favorite Kanye album of all time, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. This album is his most maximalist, big, over-the-top production that you can hear, and honestly, probably in hip-hop in general, and the drums on this album are insane. And I think one of the reasons, besides Kanye just being motivated at this time to prove himself after the controversy with Taylor Swift at the VMAs, Kanye and Mike Dean used to do this thing that they called Drum Hell Day, where all they did was just rework the drums on every song on the album, every single day, just trying to push it to new levels.
We used to have what we call Drum Hell Day,
What's that?
where like once a week, me and Kanye would wake up early and go to the studio, just me and him. And he'd be on his MPC 2000, I'd be on my 4000. Pull up every song on the album over and over and just put new drums on them, you know.
This album was a huge comeback moment for Kanye, and the production is 100% a huge reason why it was so successful. So let's dive into what makes the drums on this album sound so good. A lot of my favorite records on this album have drums that are made in a different way than those first two beats that we just created. On this album, Kanye sampled a ton of real live drum breaks, warped them, chopped them, distorted them, and layered in some more modern, punchy sounds on top of them. Some perfect examples of the drums that I'm thinking of when I think of that Twisted Fantasy sound are the ones on Power and Runaway.
Music, no one man should have all that power. The clock's ticking.
Power was produced by S1, who actually broke down another Kanye record that he produced, Murder to Excellence. And in this video, he speaks about how he takes drum breaks and kind of uses them as the main like texture and driving force for the drums, but he scoops out the low end with an EQ so that he can add his more modern, hard-hitting sounds layered in with those drums to give it that modern knock while maintaining that vintage drum break character.
One thing I love to do is when I use break beats, I love to cut the low out of the break beat so that I can add my own kicks and sometimes my own snares in it just to give it more of that bottom and sonically make it things feel a little bit more bigger and fuller.
So that's exactly what we're gonna do in our beat. To start off, we need a drum break. So I went digging inside of the vintage drum break folder in Drum Mastery, which has a ton of super live sounding drum breaks, and I found this one that caught my ear. This already sounds fire, but one thing that S1 did on the drums on Power that's super fire is chopping the drum break into a new pattern. So it's not just fully looping an 8-bar drum break for the entire song. If you look at this tracklib sample breakdown, you can see that the drum layer is actually chopped a bit to have a little bit of a different rhythm. So I went in and chopped our drum break, and I grabbed that second bar of the drum break that has that more busy kind of snare feel to it, and I looped that 3 times because it was kind of giving me Power kind of vibes. And then I kept that big drum fill that was at the end of each 4 bars. After that, I added a ton of distortion with my unreleased effects plugin and scooped out some low end with an EQ on that break to make room for our next drum sounds. Once I added that, I added a little hi-hat loop from Drum Mastery just to kind of fill out the bounce a little bit. And now that we have the live drum break elements in place for this beat, it's time to layer in some more modern and hard-hitting sounds to give this drum break some body. First thing I did was grab some boomy live kick sounds that sound like this. And then I layered them both on top of the drum break, so we really have 3 kicks playing at once. Plus, I added in a live snare that layers in with that snare as well. And I want you to take a listen to the drum break before we add in the sounds layering and kind of building out the drum break, and after, just to hear the difference. Notice how these more modern sounds are still complementing the drum break. They're not really there to be audible and like be the character or the star of the show, but they're just there to add that modern fullness. Anyways, next up, I took some inspiration from Runaway, where you hear this super distorted Vox. So I grabbed this Vox effect from my Drum Mastery kit and then threw on a ton of delay and distortion using my plugin, and you get this. It's a subtle detail, but these Voxes really do add a bunch of memorable moments in the beat and just kind of help fill everything out. And you can hear Kanye using these in a ton of records, not just on Twisted Fantasy. Anyways, from here, I want to add a distorted bass like the one you can hear on Hell of a Life. And even though this next song isn't on Twisted Fantasy, Jail gives me the same kind of energy, and I love the bass pattern that it plays. So I took both of those as reference and put down this super distorted bass line, and it instantly gets that Twisted Fantasy vibe going. Finally, to finish it off, I just wanted to add in a simple little melody just to kind of show you all the vibe. So first, I took some inspiration from Runaway and added in some piano chords and a little piano top line using live one-shots that I actually recorded on my piano that I have in my studio. And for the final sound, I added this electric guitar phrase from my Vintage Essentials kit, which sounds like this raw. This sounds fire already, but the key to getting that Twisted Fantasy kind of attitude, melody-wise and drum-wise, is distortion. So I put this guitar through my Producer Pedals plugin, and inside of the plugin, I put it through a ton of delay, distortion, chorus, and a slight filter to just kind of tame the high end after all that distortion. Take a listen to how big of a difference it makes. And with that, the beat was done. But before I play this final one through, quick reminder, every single drum sound that you've heard in today's beats are from the Drum Mastery Kit. And there's so much more inside of there that will level up your drums. So click the link in the description if you want to level up your drums today. But anyways, here's the last beat. Thank you for making it to the end of this one, and let me know in the comments down below if you want more videos like this where I'm fully focused on the drums behind your favorite artists and producers instead of more focused on the melodies. But anyways, I'll catch y'all. Peace.